Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So tonight we have the release of the new and highly anticipated card, Iron Lad, joining the Marvel Snap roster. I don't think I'm alone in thinking that Iron Lad looks like he's going to be either the most impactful or tied for the most impactful card releasing this month. So we've got a ton of different decks to go over for him, but before we get right on into that, let's talk a little bit about what the card does and whether or not he is worth your 6,000 tokens. Also, as a reminder, we will have an article linked in the description, so if you want to grab any of these decks or see a bit more of an in-depth write-up on some of the decisions behind them, definitely check that out in the link below. And if you enjoy the content, remember to like, comment, and subscribe here on the Marvel Snap Zone YouTube channel. So who is Iron Lad and what does he do? Well, in the lore, Iron Lad is actually a variant of Kang who goes back in time and decides he wants to try and do things a little bit differently to prevent the kind of inevitable outcome that is Kang the Conqueror. In Marvel Snap, Iron Lad is a 4-cost 6 power with the text on reveal, copy the text of your deck's top card. So this is a really powerful ability because most of the cards we end up playing in Marvel Snap we're playing because they have good abilities. So the fact that he can copy pretty much any ability in your deck while also being a 4/6 is really, really good. I mean, the one that comes to mind right off the top of my head is something like Iron Man, where not only are you getting a powerful effect that is normally reserved for a 5-cost card, but you're getting it on a 6-power body, which is even better than a negative flipped Iron Man, which, as we all know, is really, really powerful. But that's the thing is, he is useful in so many different archetypes, and that's why when we get to the decks here in a minute, you're going to see, I think there are more decks posted for this card than we've ever seen before on a new card kind of theory crafting. And it's because he just works in every deck under the sun. Now, is he required in all of those decks? No, I really don't think so. I think that a lot of the lists we're going to be going over here do function without Iron Lad. So if you're a little strapped on tokens and you're not sure and you want to save for high Evo, maybe that's still worth doing, as even though Iron Lad looks good, he's not going to really be the make or break piece of a lot of decks, and he's not really going to substitute another missing piece in a deck that requires very specific cards. He's more of a really powerful bonus addition if you build your deck in a way where we're getting value from Iron Lad more often than we are not. So to me, I think this is probably one of the best token purchases you can make if this card looks interesting to you, especially if you are into the Devil Dino archetype or the recently popularized Stature Black Bolt archetype. I think those are the two places where Iron Lad is going to shine the brightest. So if those are your kind of decks, maybe he is worth a bit of extra consideration. But if you're looking for something that is more guaranteed to get you a whole new archetype or a whole new variety of decks, and you're strapped on tokens, maybe it's worth saving on Iron Lad for now and holding those tokens for the high evolutionary release later this month. Before we go on to talking about the decks, we need to talk about another card that is actually releasing this month in Marvel Snap, and that is Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck was clearly designed with Iron Lad in mind. Howard the Duck is a 1-cost 2-power, ongoing, tap this card to see the top card of your deck. So, I've seen a lot of people talk about this card, and he's joining the game, I believe, just a week after Iron Lad. And is he going to be worth it? Well, I'll put up some decks on the screen here from our theory craft that do use Howard, but here's the thing with Howard the Duck. I think it's fine for synergy, and I think maybe one or two of these decks really will appreciate Howard the Duck, but this goes back to a problem we currently have with the acquisition in Marvel Snap. When you make a card like Howard the Duck that is very clearly reliant on Iron Lad, now yes, you can use Jubilee too, but there aren't a ton of ways to manipulate the top of your deck, or get a benefit from knowing the top card of your deck. So you kind of need Iron Lad and Howard together if you want to explore those synergies. And unfortunately, that is 12,000 tokens. And that's a super high ask when you also have another big bad in High Evolutionary dropping this month that's looking to give potentially Thanos levels of new decks to try out. It's just people are not going to be interested in, burning their 6,000 tokens on Howard the Duck, who has kind of a mediocre but cool effect and really only shines the most if you spend another 6,000 tokens on Iron Lad. So I thought it was worth bringing up now. We're going to see, I think, the full extent of this next season in June, where we're getting a lot of move cards for the Spider-Verse season. And I do think it really shows some pretty big flaws in the Marvel Snap system, because it's hard to make cards that are coming out at the same time and interact with each other when most of your player base isn't going to have access to these cards at the same time. They get to pick one of them, and that's it for the month. So I do think this is it's definitely showing one of the weaknesses of the current acquisition system, as I'm sure there are a lot of people who would like to play Howard the Duck with Iron Lad, as obviously they were definitely designed to complement each other, but people are just going to have a hard time justifying the tokens, so you're really, I don't think, going to see as much experimentation with this card in Iron Lad until it drops down to Pool 4 or maybe even Pool 3 in a couple months. Let's touch briefly on the decks we have here, though, featuring Howard the Duck. So we have a Galactus list. I actually think that might end up being the one where Howard gets the most use, as you can use Iron Lad to copy your Galactus in a pinch if you don't draw him. You can use him to copy Doc Ock. You can use him to copy Spider-Man. I mean, heck, you could even maybe use him on the final turn as a Hail Mary to try and copy a Null. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this card. I don't expect it to make waves in the Galactus archetype to an insane degree, but definitely a fun, different thing you can try out with that style of deck. That being said, I think you can do it without Howard almost as well. Then we have a Lockjaw ongoing deck, so just a lot of really big hits here for Howard to get. Definitely just seems like you're really trying to lean into the Lockjaw and the Iron Lad rolls, but could be solid enough. You just have to watch out for the Enchantress going around. Then we have a Thanos Zoo. I think this is one of the places that maybe he has the most potential. I would actually even consider swapping out Professor X for Iron Man, but Professor X probably also fine because this is more of an ongoing theme deck. But I do think Zoo is underrated, and Howard the Duck might be a decent addition to it, and Iron Lad definitely looks like he's going to be pretty good, if nothing else, in the Zabu Zoo lists. And then we have a Destroyer deck, so kind of like the old school ongoing Destroyer, but with Iron Lad and Howard the Duck added. I've been playing some ongoing Destroyer a little bit differently with the Orca buff, and that's been pretty good. I don't know if it's really worth two card slots here for both Howard and Iron Lad, but it could be worth considering. But with the Howard decks out of the way, let's take a look at where Iron Lad can be good right now without Howard the Duck. So the first list here is the good cards list with Stature and Black Bolt, pretty standard version of the list. However, we do kind of take a cut to our tech cards in this version in Shang-Chi and Enchantress, so we have space for the Lad and Dr. Doom. Doom has been a very powerful card in this meta, and the fact that Iron Lad has a chance to go Lad into Doom and get 2 Doombots for 4 mana with a 6 in the other lane is just pretty insane. Like I mentioned before, Zabu decks, Darkhawk decks, Dino decks, these are the decks that really have such a critical mass of good things going on. I mentioned it before, but Darkhawk decks, Dino decks, just general good stuff piles with a lot of powerful effects are going to be where Iron Lad shines the greatest, because we don't have to rely on a synergy like Howard. We're kind of just happy hitting almost every card on the top of our deck. Doom is a really cool include here, as he is super powerful if we can hit him off the Lad, and just a pretty good card in general if we aren't going for the Stature Bolt plan. Also, being able to get Lad down on 3 with Zabu seems absolutely insane. It's possible it ends up being worth to try and find space for at least one of our tech cards here again, but if you want a more proactive version of the list with Iron Lad, this is definitely a really solid way to go. Another very similar but slightly different deck here is the Doom Wave Shell. This one still leaning on all the Darkhawk elements as well as Zabu, but we also have Wave and She-Hulk stuff, so we can try and limit what the opponent is doing on their final turn, as well as Storm to complement our Nebula for hopefully closing down a lane, which we don't mind because we have Dr. Doom. Still a pretty high amount of good targets for Iron Lad, slightly less than the other deck because we do have some misses here in Chavez and She-Hulk, but overall definitely seems pretty solid. Worth noting that unless your deck gets shuffled, Chavez will always be at the bottom, so you actually won't have to worry about Iron Lad copying her, so that's kind of a nice bonus, so not actually that big of a downside. But yeah, just a bunch of high quality cards to copy here, and you're never really sad to see any of those effects on a 4/6. Then we have the Devil Dino Dark Hawk list here, pretty standard list. I do think that Iron Lad is going to be a pretty huge boost to the Devil Dino deck in particular, not only because of the power of the Dark Hawk shell with it, but it's just a really solid, well-rounded deck that doesn't really fold super hard to interaction because we have ways of protecting our stuff. I do think that people are going to experiment with other versions too. I've been playing some non-Darkhawk Dino, and it's actually been going pretty alright with the new collector, so that could be worth considering. But I do think if you want to get the most value for your Iron Lad, you probably want to be in a Darkhawk shell, as those have some of the more valuable effects that we're looking to copy. Then we have a really interesting idea here in a Iron Lad Sera Control deck. So for a while now, Zabu has pretty much only been being used in Sera on Shang-Chi and Enchantress, and in this build, we opt to go a bit more heavy on the 4-drops. So the idea with this is we're bringing back Mr. Sinister. If you didn't know, this card actually used to see quite a bit of play in Sera, hasn't in a while, but now, because of Iron Lad, being able to get a copy of your Lad if you hit him off the top seems really good. So experimenting with him for that reason. Also, the more bodies aren't bad for our Killmonger Nova combo. We still have the Mysterio Bishop shenanigans and Hitmonkey to go along with that. Shang-Chi and Enchantress as our main tech cards. And then we have Absorbing Man, who can do kind of a few interesting different things here. Not only can he copy our Iron Lad, but he can also copy our powerful tech card. So if the opponent is going really big in not one lane, but 2 lanes, we can get double Shang-Chi or double Enchantress. So pretty neat idea. I think 2/4s or 4/4s might be a bit heavy for the Sera deck, but it's possible it ends up being okay, especially if we end up hitting Sera on turn 4 or sometimes even turn 3 if we get lucky off of a Iron Lad roll. So interesting list. I definitely did not think of Sera as my first place to go with Iron Lad, but it seems like it could be fun to try out. And the last deck we have here is a little bit spicier, and that is a Iron Surfer list. So Sera Surfer with the addition of Iron Lad. And this is pretty neat because there's a cool interaction with Brood, because not only can you get Lad to copy the Broods and get 2 more 4/6s, those 4/6s are actually 3/6s because the tokens that Brood spawns are always 3 cost. So that gives us just basically a lane on its own for Silver Surfer. We have the Storm and Juggernaut combo, as well as Goose to make playing for specific lanes a little trickier for the opponent. Polaris for a little bit of interaction there as well. And then running a few pieces of interaction in terms of just countering the opponent's stuff, and Enchantress and Absorbing Man for the potential of we could copy our Surfer, we could copy the Iron Lad, we could copy the Enchantress. There's just a decent amount of solid effects to copy here. You could even copy the Brood and just fill up another lane with mostly 3-cost things. So definitely interested to see how this one goes. Obviously, these are day 1 decks, so I'm sure they will get some refining as the card comes out. But this is by far the most amount of decks we've ever had for a newly released card. And I think it just speaks to the fact that Iron Lad has a ton of potential in a vast variety of different archetypes. Believe it or not, we have even more Iron Lad decks than I have shown in this video. Definitely recommend checking out the article if you want to see them all. I'll have a few more thrown up on screen here now. But this card really can be tried anywhere. You can throw him in a Thanos Lockjaw deck. You could even put him in a Patriot deck because, fun fact, if he copies your no-text card, he becomes a no-text card himself. So he's kind of just like the Thing, worst case scenario, which is pretty funny. But there's just so many different homes you could try him in. You could try him in a discard deck with Hela, or even the MODOK version. There's just so much potential for this card. I can't wait to see where it ends up finding a home and which of these decks end up being more successful. But I really do think this is one of the best cards releasing this month. I would put it up there with being tied for high evolutionary. So if you're on the fence about whether or not this is worth your tokens, I think this is definitely an easy buy, unless you really like high evolutionary and you're not going to have enough tokens to get both of the cards by the time they release. So those are my thoughts. Those are the decks. Again, link in the description to the article where you can find all the deck lists we went over today and a few more. But that is going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you excited for Iron Lad? Do you have any kind of neat brews with him? I'd love to hear about it. That's going to wrap it up for this one. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe here at Marble Snap Zone for all your Marble Snap related content. And if you enjoy the stuff that I do, check out my links in the description for more Marble Snap content. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.